Hello, and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for A Wedding Banquet. My name is Eric Siler, and I am an instructor of film, media arts, communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of A Roadside Banquet, Peiqi Peng. Peiqi is joining us from Los Angeles, and we're pleased to see her thesis film, A Wedding Banquet, in which she completed in November 2022. Hello, Peiqi, and welcome.
Hi, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you. I know before we started this interview, we talked a little bit, and I know you are fluent in Mandarin, and we may have some students that are watching that are studying Mandarin. Can you say a special hello to those students in Mandarin?
Yeah, 大家好，很高兴今天能够来参加这个 Q&A。
Well, thank you for that. I'm sure they appreciate it. So let's get right into this film. I know it was your thesis film for the American Film Institute. How did you actually come up with this idea? Were you just pressured one day from your professor and said, we need pictures for films? Tell us a little bit about the background for this film.
It was definitely a little bit of that that I had to make a thesis film, but also I would say when I was like around 11, I was like an only child. I'm an only child my entire life, but when I was around 11, my parents really wanted another baby. And there was this period where I was like protesting that idea very vocally. And then one day we were at this restaurant with like some family friends, and the topic came up of having another child in the family, and I was like very against it. And then in order to sort of convince me otherwise that we should have a baby, my mom told me that my dad was very, very disappointed when I was born, and he saw that I was a girl, that he couldn't talk for an hour. And that really was like a very big turning point with my relationship with my dad. And so like that instant was just something that I haven't thought of in a long time, but when the opportunity of making this film came up, I thought it could be an interesting thing to revisit. It ended up being a part of the film as well. And then other than that, I really wanted to make a film about people that turn into objects. So those two ideas sort of combined.
Okay, we'll get into the objects in a moment, but tell me, why were you against having a sibling? I would think that a child may want to have a sibling or someone to play mother with.
I think it's because I was already like a bit older. I was like already 11, and the idea of me as the only child in this family is already built in. And I think it's very different to have a sibling when you're like a lot younger comparing to when you're already a teenager or a preteen, and then someone told you that you're gonna have a baby sibling. So I think that's like the main reason. Yeah. And also I was just like very spoiled as an only child. So I was just like, I don't want anything to change or anything that's not in my control to happen. Yeah.
It's interesting. So there's a lot here. I just want to just ask about this. Let me just get into this now. So you made the film. Did your parents ever see the film? And if so, what was their response or reaction to the film?
Well, like, so that incident that I was talking about, I don't think I ever talked to them about it. And then when we were fundraising for this movie, I sort of posted that as part of my director's statement as like a little like vignette of what happened, what inspired me on our like fundraising website. And then the day we launched our campaign, obviously I was like sharing the website to them and be like, oh, help me like get more people to know so we can like fundraise it. And then they saw it through that website that this incident happened, and it affected me a lot. So my parents, like, they both apparently they talked among themselves and like reflected on this, and then they texted me this really long text because they're back in China, so they couldn't there's a time difference, so we weren't like communicating in real time. So they sent me this long text of like how they feel with that, and how like they didn't realize how I was thinking regarding that. So but it was weird because that day I was like camping. I didn't see it until like hours later. So I don't think we had talked about that thing specifically since, but they really liked the movie. They really enjoyed it, and they are very proud of me for making it.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad that they are, because it was a well done film. So your tensions were, can you talk a little bit about the fantasy aspect of it, the effects? Why, what were you trying to express by having the girl turn into a feather duster?
Yeah, so I think the idea is so Karl Marx had this book called Capital, where he talked about the alienation of labor. Essentially, it's like if you're a capitalist, and then oh no, if you're like a worker, if you work too much, you're no longer a person, but just like the work itself. And that was like the inspiration. I'm like, when the person's only meaning is like what they represented in a family, in a society, then they're no longer a person, they're sort of like an object by themselves. So I think the way that is connected to this film specifically is that just from my experience and my observations, there's like this really like an entire generation of teenagers and like young adults, women in China that had a baby sibling, mostly a baby brother, after the abolishment of the one-child policy. And because they're already like much older, they are sort of expected to take care of their younger siblings, more like a parent, like a parental like role instead of as a sibling. And I think when you are tasked with that, you are no longer yourself, but more like an element of what the society expects of you. And in this case, you're turning to like a part of this domesticity and this, and you're sort of minimized and sidelined in a way. And that's why, because like in the film, the girl turns into a feather duster, and in Chinese culture, I think feather duster is like a representation of domesticity, of like cleaning and like just like a supporting role instead of like the main character.
Yeah, it was interesting. I especially enjoy how you had the girl turn and started to sing a song and perform with the feather duster. It was kind of like foreshadowing what was going to happen. So that was nicely done to help set up the film.
Yeah. And also I think it's important to show that she was like just a kid, you know, she didn't have any like intention to hurt, or like she has very well intentions for her family and for her younger siblings, but it just, the situation was sort of unfortunate for her.
Right, exactly. Also, she was trying to get attention as well too, because
Yeah,
everyone's paying attention to, the baby.
exactly.
And in that sense. So let's talk a little bit about the production of the film. I mean, it's just amazing. You understand you shot it in 6 days. It was shot in LA. Can you talk about some of the challenges and actually making this film and assembling the cast and location and so forth?
Yeah, it was very challenging to like film it in LA because there are just a very limited amount of Chinese American actors there, and also the location is obviously very different from China. It took, I would say the biggest challenge was the child actors. Our lead, she never acted before, which is very impressive considering what she managed to achieve in the film. And also the biggest challenge I would say is the toddlers, the babies we had to work with. They were twin brothers. And because if you only have one baby, you're only allowed to have them on set for like 20 minutes a day. So filming will be very hard in that kind of situation. And then even with two babies, it was challenging because they're very unpredictable. Like the hardest shot of the film was the one shot when we see the baby lying in the cradle. It took us like 3 hours to get that because whenever we put the baby down, he would cry because this is like a cradle he never been in before. And because none of our team had any babies before, we wouldn't know that. So it took us a long time to finally figure out how to do that part. And there are a lot of parts where we have to work with the baby schedule instead of let them accommodating us.
Right. And how did you find the babies?
I think they're just like people, this couple that recently had kids, and we know someone that knows them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And excuse me. And what about the rest of the cast? I understand that some crew members had to double up as cast members. Did you hold auditions? How did you assemble the rest of the cast?
For the main cast, we did do auditions. We were casting for 4 months, trying to assemble all the uncles and aunts and the parent. Some of them, like the dad and is like a professional actor, and the mom sort of acts in her off time, but everyone else are really like non-actors. So it was a lot of working with people who never had acting experiences before. And then because it's a banquet and there's so many people, so many guests, we sort of just like begged everyone we know who's like a Chinese person to come during the 2 days we shot those scenes. And also we have to, it was still not enough, so we had to use a lot of crew members. Like all the people, if you look closely, that are like facing the camera with their backs are really like crew members. Yeah.
Yeah, that's that's pretty clever to do that as well too. Tell us a little bit about like the production design, because I actually felt as if I was at a banquet, and being at a banquet, you had to have a lot of elements in there. The crowd, the food, the activities, and so forth. Tell us a little bit about what you did to actually make that happen.
Yeah, we had 2 production designers, EJ and Yara, who are both amazing, and they're both Chinese, so they cultural level understand what we're going for. And the idea of a roadside banquet is this sort of tradition of like a small town in like, I would say, the southeast region, actually southwest region of China, which is where my grandparents were from. So I shared with them a lot of like pictures from like childhood photos or just like online to let them be familiar with like how this banquet will look like. And then logistically, we had to buy a lot of stuff from like Chinese like Taobao, and then we have to like fly them over. Like a big part of our budget is to fly all these things over so we can dress the space and make it look as authentic as possible.
Okay, that's well done with that. And how much time did you spend in pre-production with this film?
I think I wrote the script in like maybe April or May of 2021, and then we gathered the team in the second half of that year, did the fundraising around the end of 2021, and then we shot the film. So the actual prep started from the end of 2021 to April of 2022. So we shot in April last year, and then we were in post until October or November.
Okay, and in post, tell us a little bit about the effects that was done to make the girl grow feathers.
Yeah, it was a combination of special effects makeup, where we put actual feathers on the actress's arm and the back of her hand. And also, after the filming was done, we went to a VFX vendor and did some VFX. Yeah, so most of the close-ups were, I would say, special effects that we had to do the day off, and then we modified them with the VFX.
Okay. And what has the response been like to this film? Let's start with your instructors. What did they say? And just at the various screenings, what have those people said?
I would say it's interesting because like before I shot it, my professors were like, not all of them, some of them like really loved it from the beginning. Some had reservations about the turning into a duster bit. They would say it's like too different from the rest of the movie or whatnot. And I would say that could still be a thing, but for me, it's very important to have that element in this film. It's like sort of the core theme of the film. So but other than that, I would say I'm very happy with like how people are responding to it. Like people cried at the preview, all that, and also for me, the most rewarding thing is a lot of people came up to me later and talked about how it really like made them remember like their siblings, or they were surprised at how true the siblinghood experiences were, even though for me, I'm the only child and I never experienced them. I just sort of imagined them. So I'm happy that that felt true to them. And also I know a lot of like Chinese women that came to me and they shared how they also feel like they also had experiences of like their parents telling them how disappointed they were because these women were born as girls, which was very surprising to me to hear that so many of them shared that experiences. But I'm glad that we got to bond over those shared experiences.
Oh, great. Great. Very good. Oh, why did you call this a roadside banquet?
Like I was saying, it was like a custom of like these small towns in China. Like if I can choose to do anything differently, I would say I would choose to film this, shot this film back in those small towns in China. And I think, yeah, just I feel for me, it's like I love when a movie started happy and everyone's like celebrating and having a great party, and then things go wrong. And so for me, I wanted to highlight how this is this very happy event, this happy gathering, and then in like an unnoticed corner, this one girl is having like a real crisis quietly.
So in that part of China is it something is it often called like a roadside banquet, or is roadside part of a feast? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's like it's usually in small towns where when you have like something to celebrate, like a wedding or uh, like this, like a birthday party, instead of like hosting the party inside your house, you invite everyone in town, but you set up these tables on like the road or the ground around your house, and then everyone in town can come. They just come in, eat, and then they leave. And that's why it's called a roadside banquet. Yeah.
Okay, so that's quite common. That's quite common, and people just can show up.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this is really interesting. Really delightful film, well told, well shot, well edited. Now that what's next for you? Are you still in school? Are you working on another project? Tell us what's going on now and next in your life.
Yeah. So I graduated at the end of last year, and now I'm working sort of freelance as a videographer, shooting like small documentary series, And for me, I have a few short film scripts that I'm like submitting to programs. One of them I'm going to shoot this summer, and I'm wrapping up a feature script right now.
Well, great. Well, best of luck to you with your projects. If it's anything like a Roadside Banquet, we are certainly in for a treat. Well, thank you, Peiqi, for joining us today. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. And before we say goodbye, can you say goodbye to our Mandarin speaking students?
Yes. 谢谢大家，再见。
Okay, thank you for that. And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about upcoming film festivals, please visit clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.